Welcome to the Car Guys, and this week we've got a special interview that was conducted between myself and Edward Lovett of Collecting Cars. This video has already gone live on the Collecting Cars YouTube channel, but now I thought it was time for you guys to see it. I hope you enjoy it. We talked all about car dealership, about being a customer, about being a dealer, and we talked about collecting cars itself. Now, it is a Zoom call, which means the quality is not the level that I would normally have on this channel, but the discussion was so interesting, I thought you just had to see it.
So welcome to Collecting Cars and TheCarGuys.TV. I reached out to Damian a week or so ago for those who follow TheCarGuys.TV, and Damian put a thought-provoking video out on his experience with his local Porsche centre, which coincidentally diverted him off to one of my family's Porsche centres. And I thought it was really interesting. So as I say, it compelled me to reach out to Damian, and we decided we should host a recorded Zoom together to share amongst our audiences and try and talk from, a past car salesman's point of view and a customer's point of view, to try and answer a few questions that are always on people's minds and perhaps people aren't brave enough to ask. So, Damian, welcome.
No, thank you very much for having me. Actually, I was sort of mystified and actually honoured to be invited onto this. And first of all, I should probably say congratulations on the success of Collecting Cars, because it's been phenomenal, and I've watched it every step of the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I've come close. I've come close a few times actually on some of the cars, and so I'm always on there, always looking, as I'm sure everyone else is as well.
Well, funny enough, obviously we've got thousands of bidders on the website now, and most people go relatively incognito. But you're not very incognito, are you? I think your
No.
your username is TheCarGuys.
Exactly. Yeah. Guilty.
Exactly, and it's funny. We've got some very successful users on our website, and I'm surprised they use their name as their username, but they do. Which means that the owners of the car immediately Google the name to say, "Oh, he's bidding on my car. That's interesting."
Yeah.
or she.
Yes, exactly.
So, just for our guests, Damian, would you just give us a quick rundown on your background and why you started CarGuys.TV?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my background is in media and specifically magazine publishing. So I'm sort of from that era. I get a big passion out of creating things, and so physical print magazines was my life for 25 years. And then once I got out of that industry and sold my business, I didn't have anything really to do. I had a sort of small car collection that I was sort of building, and I was quite interested in that. And I really wanted to get into videos and doing sort of film editing, because we didn't do any of that really in my media companies, strangely, even though that was all the rage near the end. So I personally wanted to learn how to become a filmmaker and sort of develop my skills that way, mainly to stop my mind going to mush, as it no doubt would do in semi-retirement. And I had my cars, so I thought, well, let's do a car channel. I've got a friend of mine called Jason who's from Essex. He's a massive car fan. We bonded over the Cannonball Run film and on various car trips. So we decided to get together, and we thought, well, we had a look at the landscape. There's loads of people out there doing single blog type car videos, the standard sort of thing where they hold the camera and look at it and chat positively about the cars. And we thought, well, let's do it differently. Let's have two of us on camera, and then you could get that sort of banter and camaraderie going on, and hopefully they would be a bit more funny, and there'd be a bit more chemistry on screen. So we thought, well, let's crack on and do it. And we started initially, and generally we cover mainly our car collections. Occasionally we get people who offer to lend us cars to drive. Very occasionally we get dealers, and we haven't in any way attempted to penetrate the motor industry by getting loan cars or free stuff like that. We are really bad at begging for stuff and sort of flagging. We're terrible about that. We're older, obviously, than most people on YouTube, and we're just terrible at that whole side. So unfortunately we don't blag free press cars all the time. So everything we cover is generally, it's either fans of the channel or it's our own cars.
Interesting. We'll come on to blagging when we talk about car, the buying and selling experiences of new cars in a moment. And so you obviously don't look like the stereotypical car influencer of today, and I guess that's given you a very different type of audience, hasn't it? I guess you've probably got a more mature audience that do buy and sell cars rather than young kids that are aspiring to buy them one day or just watching your videos because, hey, that's a cool car.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the sort of audience that we've attracted they're generally older. So, the core audience would be sort of 35 plus, everything up to about 60 generally is the core. They're all either car collectors or they've got nice cars. And they certainly can afford to indulge the passion, which I think is why they relate to it, because a lot of our stuff is about what it's like to own these cars every day, because we're not getting them for like 2 days on the south of France. We're actually living with them. And I think it's that, that type of content which attracts that audience. And although we have influenced a lot of people to buy cars, the people that watch our channel, they generally have the muscle and the financial ability to sort of buy them and do them. So it's quite interesting. It also means that the vast majority of people, people who are commenting on the videos, it's very sensible, really intelligent comments that we get. We really sort of haven't had anything like the sort of level of abuse that you tend to get on other channels sometimes. They are all generally pretty clued up people who appreciate the effort that we're putting in, and they kind of understand that we're a bit older and doing a different type of content.
I did notice you did retweet or post on your Instagram one of the negative comments you get. I guess unfortunately in this world you can't avoid them. There's some people that just can't help themselves but by being negative. But there we go.
Yeah, but I think what we've been so impressed about, having seen the rest of the YouTube environment, we've been so impressed. That we really just haven't really had that. The number of comments that we've got that have been sort of negative are tiny compared to it. And so I think I guess that means that when you see the odd one come in, the most extreme version of wokeness or some kind of crazy nonsense, it sort of stands out a lot more, and we pay attention, I guess. But on the whole, everyone is fantastic. And the big kick of having the channel, from my point of view, I love creating things. So creating the episodes is what drives me on. But it's when you put it live and then you just see the comments pouring in.
Yeah,
that's the biggest reason for doing it, really, for both of us. We just love it. Plus the fact we get to drive loads of cool cars, but it's really that feedback, that instant feedback, that's fantastic.
Great. Well, so as I said at the start, it was Damian's video on his experience at the Porsche Centre that made me feel the need to reach out to him. And most of you probably are aware, but my family business is the Dick Lovett Group in the West Country of the UK here, and they're main dealers for Porsche, Ferrari, Aston Martin, BMW. I don't mean to sound like a walking advert, and I'm not, and I have no involvement with the business nowadays, purely because of my own interests and now collecting cars. But I have spent, since 16 years old, most of my working career working in the family business. So I've been in the car wash, in the workshop, in the parts department, in the administration, and then in sales management, etc. So I'm pretty knowledgeable about what goes on behind the scenes. I'm certainly not here to throw anyone under the bus, and I don't think there are really any trade secrets. But subsequently, and especially over the last 10 years, I've become a retail customer like you, Damian, and I've lived all over the world, and I share the frustrations that you had the other day, and I hate it. And actually, looking back at my days at Dick Lovett, I think that company in general, and from my experience of being a car salesman, is totally the opposite to the experience that you've had at your local Porsche Centre. However, from traveling around the world, that the experience that you've had is the experience I've become accustomed to around the world, is that in general, main dealers, you know, staff come and go. There's very little care for the customer nowadays, would be my experience. And that's what prompted me to call you. And I know you've got some questions written down there, so I'll let you do the first session of grilling me, and then it'll be the salesman grilling the punter.
Absolutely fine. Yeah, that's only fair in my opinion. That's absolutely fine. I think I should probably start by saying that I bought my first 911 actually from Dick Lovett. So I do have a sort of fond feeling towards that company. It was when it was in the middle of Bristol, in the city centre.
Yeah, okay. Opposite the church. So I bought,
yeah, I think I bought a 993 Carrera from there, and bought subsequent things as well. But what I noticed from the video is exactly as you say. At the moment, there's around about, I think, 2,500 comments on that video, and there's obviously a lot of horror stories that people are talking about with their dealership or things they've heard. So it did generate quite a large amount of response and interaction. There were people saying, you know, I've had great stories, you know, I had a great experience, and I totally welcome that, because as far as I'm concerned, my experience that I had could easily be a one-off, or it could be quite rare. You know, it just happened to happen to me, and I just happened to talk about it because I had an outlet to talk about it, you know, with, and the channel is about my experiences. But it could easily be an isolated incident, or it could be commonplace. And you know, I didn't really know, but for judging by the comments, yeah, it seems to be a lot more common than you'd think. And ultimately, the problem that, you know, I talked about, people picked up on different parts of the video, and some people didn't watch all of it and therefore missed out on quite a bit. But the fundamental part was just the fact that I, you know, wasn't told that you know, the salesperson that I had been dealing with had gone, and I wasn't told about it for perhaps 6 months to a year. And so all that sort of stored acumen and all those conversations that I'd had, where we talked about the sort of things I was interested in, or, you know, what cars I'm looking at doing, all of that knowledge sort of vaporized. And it fundamentally came down to the fact that whoever had been handed my account, and you've got to figure that, you know, a sales lead has value and should be, you know, used to generate more sales and more cash for the dealership. But someone was given that account and didn't even bother to make one phone call in a long period of time. And so that was the thing that really caused me the issue, was just the fact that no one even had the common courtesy to give me a call. And then obviously it was further compounded. The second half of the video was compounded when we were then talking about what cars therefore I was looking to get, he immediately sort of tried to sell me sort of 8 Macans and 6 Cayennes in return for a Porsche GT car. So that was the second stage of sort of rants that I had, really, was that, you know, I'd had this customer service issue, and rather than apologizing for that, it was straight on to sort of treating me a bit like a mug. So I think that's probably why it ramped up quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I thought this is a fantastic opportunity to talk about that whole process and maybe get some insider information and find out about it. I mean, do you think, Edward, do you think that car dealers deserve the reputation that many people have of them, or do you think it's changing? What's your view on it?
Obviously, I think we're talking about manufacturer car dealers. Is that fair to say in this circumstance? Well, I think
yes, I would.
It's a pretty challenging question, because obviously we're talking about big businesses here. You know, some of them have got 150 employees running a business, and the salesman in the front door is, you know, salesmen come and go at the end of the day, and if they're good at their job, they sell cars, and that's their responsibility. I think that the big thing that's changed, in my opinion, which is why you're being affected in the way you're being affected. I think the dealer was Chapelgate originally, wasn't it? That's right. It was Chapelgate, and then it's turned into a big PLC. Now, my father, who still owns Dick Lovett, would have known the owner from Chapelgate, and he would have known Frank Sittner, and he would have known Graham Deeks, and all these different people that privately own the dealerships. And they sat upstairs, and they had the salesman downstairs that joined their businesses for a career being a salesman. But those days have gone. You know, these big dealerships are owned by PLCs. They're run by accountants in many ways, and the manufacturers are probably not much better. So, you know, it is to a certain degree about money, money, money. And
I do think perhaps actually, I do think I am a bit of I guess, an old-fashioned customer, in that for me, what I want more than anything else is to develop a relationship with a salesperson at a brand that I love, and sort of like grow with them and gradually build that up, and always have that point of contact. And that to me is how I like to operate. You know, in each of the areas of things that I love, I've got people that I've built up with and learnt with and trust, and they are my main person I deal with, and therefore we have this sort of really nice symbiotic relationship, and it works really well. And so I suppose I'm I guess at odds at that whole replacement culture. You know, one guy comes in, one guy goes out, who cares? You know, we just want to shift units. I suppose maybe what we're seeing there with.
No, I'm younger than you, and I'm the same. So, you know, that's what I want. Whether I'm buying a jumper or a car, you know, I want to go back and see the guy next year and buy another jumper off him or another car.
Totally.
And the truth is, it is changing, and it's probably going to get worse rather than better. You know, I know obviously from your geographical location, your local Ferrari dealer is Meridian Modena. And, you know, I love Warren to bits down there. You know, that is a family-run business. The father's still about, two brothers in the business. Nigel, the sales manager's probably been there for 25 years or so now. And but that only happens because it's a privately owned business and privately run. And Dick Lovett, fortunately for them, still have that culture. You know, our managing director has been there for 30 plus years. We've got guys in the parts department that have been there for 40 years, you know, and it's only having that continuity and the care from the very top, being a privately owned business that wants to retain their customers, that gives you that service. You know, these big PLCs, it's just not going to happen. You know, they answer to the shareholders, etc. And it is about pushing hard. And if the salesman's not doing the numbers, then we lose. And that salesman might have been a great, you know, the guy you were dealing with probably was a great guy. And if he was still there, he'd have your back and be defending your corner and say, no, Damian, we said to Damian, we'd get him a Panamera Turbo S, or what, you know, it doesn't matter what the car is. But now, unfortunately, you know, that great salesman leaves and they replace him with the next one. The next one is probably a young guy. You know, they've forgotten the conversation about GT3s and Boxsters and all the cars you've had in the past. It's sort of clean sheet of paper. Well, look, I might be able to help you, but, you know, you might need to help us. And I honestly, I hate it. It infuriates me that those conversations go on. And, you know, I don't buy new cars, Damian, for exactly that reason. I have got zero interest in flirting with, you know, my family dealership, let alone any other dealer. And as I said, I've done it all over the world, and I lived in LA for a bit, walked into the local Porsche center, ready to buy a brand new car, and probably the only car I would have got in the way I would have wanted it is if I'd given the guy a brand new Rolex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, I guess what we've learned there is, you know, certainly for our style of purchasing or desire from customer service, really we should be seeking out those family-owned businesses, and those are the ones that we should be sort of giving our business to, because it sounds like, you know, for all those reasons, that's, you know, they are going to be able to deliver on that. I wouldn't call it old-fashioned values, but certainly those sort of core, you know, proper gold seal salesman type values that people used to have. I guess they're the last bastion of that, and more likely to have it.
I think they are, and honestly, I think you've got to, you know, if you're forming a relationship with your local Porsche Center BMW dealer that's a PLC, I think you've just, you know, you might have a great relationship which might last for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but I think you've always got to be open-minded to the fact if the dealer principal leaves, the salesman leaves, the service manager leaves, they're not going to remember you anymore. You know, it's it's moving, and that is the generation we're in. You know, people don't stay in their jobs very long. People don't keep their cars. People don't keep their cars very long.
Yeah, it's I mean, it has, like, I mean, it's totally changed me, I have to say. This experience has really, yeah, like you say, it's made me put off modern cars, brand new cars almost entirely, and made me look, backwards. That's probably why I'm spending so much time on collecting cars, isn't it? Because I'm looking at buying all that old classic stuff. What, from your point of view, then, give us an idea. What was the sort of biggest or most exciting sort of deal that you've done then in the motor trade?
So as trying to keep it to manufacturers. No, I'm Damian. My as a salesman, it's about having that repeat custom and people. I think I left sales in a car dealership 12 years or so ago. I would have run the Ferrari business for a while. Probably I left that about maybe 10 years ago or so now. Time goes pretty quickly, doesn't it? And it was those customers that came back once a year, once every 2 years, part exchange their old car, which they'd used and loved. We'd given them a part exchange price, ordered the new one, and went on. The world has changed a lot in 10 years. And HRO in telling me that I think they had 500 and something deposits on new Ferraris over the next 3 years, but out of those 500 something deposits, I think a third of them, like half of them, had more than 2 cars on order. A third of them had more than 4 cars on order. And
wow.
One of the frustrations you hear is, all right, I'm going to order a 488 coupe, then a 488 Spider, then a Pista, then an 812. And, there's no real science when these cars arrive. So they all land at the same time. No one needs all those
totally.
4 cars. Yeah, and Porsche is probably a bit better than that, because you probably don't need to order a GT3, a GT3 RS, and a GT3 Touring, because they sort of all do the same thing. You shouldn't need all 3. And I know from following a few people's comments, especially through the 991 era, where flipping cars, etc., has become very common practice. Quite a few owners got their knickers in a twist because they got the first 991 GT3 and then they were pissed off because they didn't get allocated a 991 GT2. And because certain owners just feel like they deserve every car, but not everyone can have every car, unfortunately. So I think the dealers have had to adjust to start realizing they can't give everyone what they want. So there's an awful lot of managing expectations behind the scenes, and then you start getting into, you can just picture it, can't you, from a business point of view, right? We've got 3 people here, we've got 10 people, we've been allocated 3 991 GT2s. How are we going to decide who to give it to? Right, let's look at a list. How many cars have they bought off us? How long have they been buying off us? Have we always had the cars back? And if you get down to it and there's still 6 people that have done all that, then it'd be like, how are we going to choose between it? Well, why don't you go and ask him if he will buy that Cayenne Turbo that we can't bloody sell? and it starts there, and it's become a downward trend since then. So just as I left Dick Lovett back in 911R, when did that come out? Was it 6 or 7 years ago? We did exactly that. Right, we've got, I think between the group we had 6 911Rs allocated, and we probably had 20 people wanting them. So we went and took all of those 20 people and, right, how many cars have they bought off us, and put it in order. And guess what? The 6 top people pretty much all got a 911R, because he's been buying cars of us for 25 years. He's been buying cars of us for 15 years. And in my opinion, all the right people got the cars. And even the right people have started to disappoint the dealers, because no, you'll definitely have it back. You'll definitely have it back. And 5 minutes later, it's on Roman's website. Because greed gets in the way of loyalty.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, so I mean, selling the car or allocating the cars based on a long-standing mutual relationship, to me, totally makes sense, because that's the sort of thing that I would want to build up and do. So that seems like the fairest way of doing it. I totally can understand your point where, if you've got 10 people that have all done that, and they're all 25 years and they've all been brilliant, and you've only got 6 cars, that's definitely, I can see an issue. I suppose also if I if you get one of those cars and then you want to sell it back to the dealer, what's the situation then if the car is worth double what it was? Is the dealer surely is not allowed to retail it, are they, for that double price? So
no, I think they are allowed to retail it. They can't, from what I understand, they can't really be seen to be advertising it for many reasons, because the manufacturer doesn't want to be dealing with disgruntled customers. But it's not the dealer's fault, the overs market, really. It's just, it is what it is. It's no different with steel Rolexes, and Rolex are trying to do the same thing, making sure they're not being sold by someone that's going to stick it straight on watchcollecting.com.
Nice. Very good, very good.
No, but there is that problem. I think, again, though, that greed really gets in the way. And from what I saw, let's just say you bought a 911R for 150 grand, and you just decide either it's not the car for you, or I'm not using it, and I really can't turn down the £150,000 profit. What started this whole 991 era thing? Loyalty went straight out the window, because by the time they called the dealer to say, I want to sell my 911R, it wasn't, I want to sell my 911R. It's, I'm going to sell my 911R. Tom Hartley's bid me this. Romans have bid me that. This guy will give me that on SOR. And I've got a mate down the road will give it. So I'll give it to you because I'm loyal, but you need to give me X. They were turning into slippery little buggers. And from a dealer's point of view, we obviously we did everything we could to try and retain the cars, but the truth is the relationship's over, because you can just see it, because it's they don't want us to earn anything. They don't want they don't want to say, right, I'm going to give it to you on SOR. Well, you can either buy it back, and let's say Hartley's offered me 275, but you guys can have it for 260 because you allocated me the car. It's only fair. Or I'll consign it with you and I'll give you a fair margin out of the deal or something like that. It just wasn't like that. People aren't, this loyalty everyone says they crave for when they were trying to get the allocation of the 911R. It was two fingers up to the dealer. It was.
And the big question then, so therefore, does the blacklisting actually exist? Are people who do that cut off therefore in the future, or is it kind of like, oh, we can't do that to Dave?
That's a very good question, Damian. And what did I say right at the start to say I'll come back to this? I can't remember what word I used. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, blacklisting definitely exists. If a guy's said he's not going to flip a car and he flips it, and then he comes in and grovels, okay, I'll never do it again, and then flips it again. The dealer's probably not going to give him a good car again. What I find incredible, and this is absolutely a skill, by the way, that guy that's pissed off Porsche Centre Swindon, let's say, I bet he's still getting the cars he wants. He's just getting them from a different Porsche Centre, because from what I've learned, these guys that flip cars, they've been doing it for 20 years. So they've been pissing dealers off for 20 years, but they're still getting the cars.
But they've got 8 or 9 dealers all sourcing a car, presumably, are there? There's no link between them all that says, hang on a minute, we've got...
there's no link, but if they ordered the car new, there's probably a link. The Ferrari can manage it pretty well, I think, but the Porsche probably don't care, to be honest with you, because look, they've allocated the cars to the dealer. They've given the dealer the responsibility to allocate it to the customer. It's not the same, Ferrari... You can't sell him that. He sold his F12 TDF to Tom Hartley. He's not getting another car from us. So that definitely happens with Porsche. They put their trust in the dealer to allocate the cars to the right people. And if the dealer keeps choosing to give it to that same bloke that keeps selling it to Tom Hartley because someone gives him sort of $5,000 and greases his palm, then there we go. But in my opinion, those businesses are going to go down the pan anyway if they've got those types of salesmen in there. who are probably greasing the sales manager's hand, a palm, and the DP's palm. You know, it's pretty toxic.
Yeah, and so and it definitely, so presumably this whole, you know, you've got to buy two Macans, you know, a KN and a Boxster S with a terrible spec. That's all a mechanism that's been created by the dealer in order to try and sift out the ones that should get the cars. There's nothing there that Porsche says is, can you use our GT cars as vehicles to get rid of old stock?
Absolutely, I have to say I don't know that for to be factual. However, I would have thought it's dealers trying to make the most out of a difficult situation. Now, if that guy does end up flipping his GT3 and making 100 grand, I don't think you can be that pissed off if he's bought a Macan, a Panamera, and a Boxster and a 911 for his wife or something like that.
Yeah, because he's come out even, hasn't he? Basically.
Yeah, exactly. and yeah, you know, there's no correct answer to it, Damian, in my mind. But for me, I find it a great shame that you can't go and form a long-term relationship with most car businesses out there nowadays.
Yeah, I think definitely that's what saddens me as well. I've got a good relationship with, you know, Meridian because of the history. So they understand me, they know me. Like you say, there's a continuity through, you know, the top guys, you know, John and Warren, and therefore they know you, understand you, they know everything you've bought off the top of their heads, they know everyone, and so you get quite a nice warm family feeling from it. And that's what I was hoping really to emulate on the Porsche side. But you know, I think I've just basically come up against, as you say, the you know, the PLC environment, and that's all gone. So I mean, you know, my first thought was that's it for new cars. But maybe the answer also is to go to you know, an independent or a family business and start again from there.
Start again, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm so passionate about Porsche that it's not like I'm not going to buy, you know, Porsches again. I'm less interested in the new stuff, I have to say. So, you know, for me, I'll probably just go back and buy up lots of old ones.
Yeah. A question back to you as a punter, if I may.
Yeah.
One thing that I find very sad, and I think this is probably manufacturers pushing more and more units into the marketplace. You know, the modern world of Instagram and social media, and you've just taken delivery of your new 992 Turbo S. Oh, but there's now a Turbo S lightweight. I need to order that as well. You know, I find that there's a big percentage of the supercar market that to some extent, quite rightly, are allergic to the fear of depreciation. That, you know, if they're not just going to go into a Ferrari dealership now and order an SF90 if they think they might lose 50,000 or 100,000 pounds, which feels to me is such a shame. And the reason they're not going to do it, because you only lose money on a car when you come to sell it. But at the same time, if you went and ordered that SF90 and had it in exactly the color you wanted and went to the factory and spec'd it and kept it for 3 years and did 12,000 miles in it and lost half its value in 3 years, but when you come to sell it and part exchange it for the replacement of whatever it might be, you're going to have such amazing memories of that car that actually the money doesn't really matter. But those things don't seem to be happening anymore because people are buying a 488 and getting it spec'd up at Atelier and then ordering a 488 Spider, and they do 250 miles in their 488 Spider or their coupe, and the Spider turns up and they're like, oh, I've lost 150 grand on the coupe. I'll just sell that and I don't want the Spider, ditch the Spider. And that's just because of the pace people are changing, and also they just don't want the depreciation, which, as I say, I accept. But the depreciation is palatable over time. It's obviously not palatable over 250 miles and 5 minutes owning it.
Exactly. Well, that's the key. Depreciation is most savage in the short term. So, you know, you're always going to suffer the worst if you chop and change more quickly. I think really I've seen a change where I've got a lot of the cars that I've got are long-term ones that will stay forever or for long periods of time. And I've never been really interested in buying and chopping and changing. But there was a period of about 5 years partly because of the speed of cars being launched, and partly because of the fact that you were getting appreciation on certain models, that you were very much as a customer thinking, right, I'll buy this car and then this car and this car and this car to get that special car, and then that's the one I'll keep, but also that's the one that we will have massively appreciated, and it will therefore pay for the other cars. And I think, I mean, I fell into that trap with Ferrari for a brief period, where I suddenly was sitting there going, well, why don't I just order all of the cars that they've got coming out? Because really, if that gets me into a GTO or something, then it'll all be worth it. And I sort of moved from my mentality of trying to get the ones that I wanted. So there were specific cars I really wanted, but I couldn't actually get those unless I bought other cars.
Yeah.
So that sort of started to teach me about buying cars that I don't really want to get the one that I do. So that it was really the dealers that were pushing me into that. And then once you're in that mindset, you go, well, why don't I order this, this, and this, and then I'll get one of those as well.
Yeah.
And maybe if I get that one, then I'll get one of the super duper ones, and then I'll get a LaFerrari Aperta, and I'll make £2.5 million profit on that one.
Yeah.
And you fall into it, and then all of a sudden you're on that sort of escalator, and you can't sort of stop. You're doing it. Yes, you're losing depreciation, but who cares, because the end game's going to be worth it. And I started to do that. In fact, I only really did it once, in order to get my Pista. Because that's a car I really wanted, and I sort of kind of had to get a 488 coupe, which I definitely didn't want, to get that car. And because it's me, I spec'd it really nicely, because I was like thinking with my with my heart rather than my head, and lost a bundle sort of selling that. I did get my Pista, but I suddenly was thinking, look, I just don't need to be ordering all of these cars.
Yeah.
And because lots of them are being made and they're being replaced so quickly, I also felt quite a big slap in the face, where you'd put your name down for a car and you'd be excited about it, and then they'd announce the replacement, and you'd go, oh, so now that's already been replaced. And they're like, yeah. And you go, so that's going to have an even more catastrophic effect on the depreciation of the one I'm selling now. Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. And you're like, oh my God. So I was like being hit. So I sort of took the decision really that I would sort of get out of that game and dump a lot of the orders that I had, and just concentrate on the cars that I had, because there was a time where I got my Pista. Oh, I'm still waiting for my Pista. I'd ordered an F8 Tributo. The F8 Tributo was going to arrive before my Pista, and it's the replacement. So how would I have loved the Pista if I'd already got the car that was demonstrably better than it before I'd even got the Pista itself? I was like, it just takes the joy away from owning a new car, getting a new car. So
it's almost exhausting. It's almost exhausting listening to that mentality when you're talking about buying your dream car, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I did is I dumped all the cars, and then my Pista finally arrived. And what I'm doing now is I'm focusing on driving and enjoying that car.
Yeah,
and I'm not thinking about any others. And I like you say, I personally spec'd it, so it feels special to me because it's a unique sort of car, and so I'm just now enjoying that. That's probably also why I'm not constantly thinking about what's the next car. I'm not. So many new cars don't interest me at all. I'm going to spend a bit of time now enjoying what I've got and just driving it.
I have to say, I get a bit from a dealer's point of view again, but I have very little sympathy for people that have had to suffer these huge depreciations on buying everything to get something, because no one forced them to hand over the deposits. It was their naivety to some degree, trusting the salesman, and also believing that, because Ferrari never said themselves that when the 812 lightweight comes out, we're going to limit it to 499. People have just believed that's the case, so they believe it's going to double in value. And look at the one thing Aston Martin have always been very smart at doing is they price the premium into the car, and a lot of people have actually been asking Porsche to, if they made a GT3 250 grand, it's going to weed out the profiteers And it means that the hardcore owners are going to own the cars, whether they go up or down in value. Well, that's your risk to take. And I do think there's a bit of common sense in that, but Porsche are a business. They know what they need to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then whilst all these orders are coming in for a 488 Coupe, 488 Spider, California T, Lusso, so everyone can get the next 812 lightweight, Ferrari must be looking at their spreadsheets thinking, oh my gosh, there's an awful lot of demand here.
Exactly.
We've got 3,000 people that want to order a Pista. Well, we better make enough of those. There's not enough people ordering 488 Coupes. So they've obviously ramped the production up to fulfill all those people that want the cars.
Exactly. And I asked them actually directly the other day. I said, actually, do you keep track of the metric of the number of people that cancel the car when you announce a new variant of the car? And they do. They keep track of it all. So they must know, for example, with the SF90, the SF90 was an interesting one because it's not a halo car, but it's bigger than a normal car. It's more exciting, more prestigious. And when it was launched, we all thought it was going to be a limited numbered car. So it wasn't. So everyone's a bit deflated by that. The real hardcore fans still ordered the SF90 because they wanted the nicest, coolest thing, and they wanted to support Ferrari in this new endeavor. And then Ferrari then said, oh yeah, and there's the Spider. And I was like, well, how many people stick with the coupe? And therefore you've got the Spider, which comes out, which will ultimately affect the value of their coupe more. How many people cancelled at that point and then got into the Spider? In which case, what happened to all those SF90 orders that were suddenly being unfulfilled? What's happening there? Are they then having to go back out to the market and say, oh, we've got some SF90s now that you can have? It just seemed very disruptive the way they were doing it. And I was just surprised really how they were doing that and the effect that it had on that sort of halo car. For me, I wasn't interested in that car, so it didn't really bother me, but I had a lot of people that had invested in it and decided to buy one for 450,000 quid, and then they bring out the Spider, and you think, well, hang on a minute, the Spider with a retractable hardtop is pretty much identical to the coupe anyway. It's not like you have to suffer a canvas roof now, and there's a big reason. They're pretty much the same car. So stuff like that, exactly that combined with the sheer number that they're producing is therefore meaning that you've got more cars appearing. Your car, which you haven't even got yet, has already been technologically replaced. So you don't feel great about that. And also a double kick in the teeth. It's probably also worth a lot less on the second-hand value, because I ordered my 812 Superfast in February 2017. I still hadn't had it by the start of 2020. By which time they'd already brought out the GTS, which had given it a massive kidney punch of depreciation. And I was looking at picking up an 812 Superfast, which I was very excited about getting, but I was immediately going to lose £150,000 worth of depreciation. And whilst I wasn't going to keep that car for life, like some of the others that I would have done, and whilst that was less important to me because I was going to enjoy the car, you still don't like to feel a mug. You don't want to feel that much of an idiot kind of thing. Handing over and then immediately, when it's a chunk of depreciation, you accept it. Cars all used to depreciate, so people shouldn't get used to this appreciation phenomenon because it's already over. But I think when it's double what it should be, that's where it starts to feel a bit cheeky. And
I'm with you on that. I don't mean to be too harsh to say I don't. I think it's this multiple ordering thing. I don't have, if you've ordered the 812 for the right reason, and by the time it turns up, there's 150 grand you're burning as you drive out the door. I'd probably not be driving out the door in it, to be honest with you, and losing my deposit. And I know a lot of people have chosen to take that route. However, it's just I think it's been used before. I don't know if you guys have used this expression, but there's just feels like there's a bit of supercar fatigue out there. And also content, and you're not to blame, Damian, because you're not an influencer and you're driving your own cars, but if you've ordered an 812 or whatever brand new car and you wait 3 years for it, by the time it turns up, it doesn't feel special anyway, because every man and his dog has put a video on it for an hour on YouTube or Instagram or something like that. So you think, right, I'm the last guy to ever drive drive an 812.
That's exactly how I felt about mine. Literally every friend that I had got their car, had already had their first annual service and been using them. And I was still sitting here waiting for it. They then, in some cases, they had already almost got their GTS. So they'd had a year or more of enjoying the 812. They now had their GTS arriving. And I'm sitting there going, hang on a minute, what's going on? I seriously thought, I was like, hang on, is this because I didn't say the Portofino was very good? Was it that? Have I been blackballed? You know, is my order been shoved to the back because I was dissed Ferrari in some way? And yeah, I was just sort of feeling increasingly uneasy about it, and I just thought, well, at the point where I ordered it, thinking I probably would have got one of the early ones. You know, in 2017, I was extremely excited, and the excitement just gradually chipped away.
Yeah.
Over those years, and then I just sort of thought, I think I feel like a bit of a mug. So I just thought, well, I'll get out. And again, focus all my effort on enjoying the ones that I did have.
Yeah. So I think the summary is buy your car from a family business if possible, and only buy what you want.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, buy it because you want to use it. Don't buy it because you think you're going to make profit on it. You know, don't do any of those sort of things. Don't buy it because you think it'll get you more views on YouTube or Instagram. None of those are good reasons for doing it. Because you know the times of massive profiteering are rapidly coming to an end, and you've got to enjoy what you've got. I think that's why my collection is quite varied. It's spread over. I've got some newish sort of stuff, and I've got some stuff in the sort of 90s and 2000s. But each one offers a different driving experience, or it makes me smile in a different way. They're all sort of like interesting in their own way, and that's what I love about them. That's why it's so eclectic, and I think that's why the following on the Car Guys is what it is, because you can see the honesty of purchasing. I'm not buying any of them cynically to get views.
Yeah.
I'm not buying them, I'm not buying them for any other reason than for me. And I just happen to occasionally point the camera and show what I'm doing with them, but the two are not linked in any way.
No, fair enough.
I think that's the big difference. It's all about the enjoyment first. But I have great fun. I absolutely love, get a massive kick out of making the films. But I love filming the stuff. I love coming up with new techniques. I love making jokes. I love making classic references to pop culture or things, knowing that there'll be a 5% of the audience will get it and will love it, and the other 95% probably don't get it. I love those sort of little elements of it. And coming from that generation of reading Clarkson and then obviously watching old Top Gear, I get the buzz out of doing that similar sort of thing. I think that's what drives me on it.
So if you were to, what new car would you want at the moment, either whether it's not built or you could order it, and what classic car would you want at the moment?
Well, so classic car, I'll start with classic car. One of the ones that excite me the most at the moment are a Ferrari 512 TR. I think is one of the things that I've spent so much time loving that car. I really think there could be one of those in my future. And I think possibly something in the 993 generation Porsche as well. Those sort of things at the moment are exciting me. I'm trying to think new cars. I think the GR Yaris is probably the only thing that I've driven recently that's brand new that I've absolutely loved, and I've got an order in for one of those, but I've just devastatingly been told that Toyota has completely cocked up its allocations, and instead of getting it in May, it's now going to be December. So
there might be one coming to collectingcars.com in the next week.
I was going to say I was feeling really gutted for not buying that red one that came up, because I was really close to buying that, but I'd already had this other one allocated, and they said it was coming. So I sort of thought, oh, I don't need to get that one now, but I kind of wish I had now, because it's now been completely delayed.
Well, unfortunately with that car, and I'm going to say it on here because we've had an awful lot of stick on some of the UK familiar forums to us, and one of them's recently been closed down, which I think they blamed on us, which was not the case. But there was a guy who knows who he is, who can sign that red car to us, which we did sell in the auction to a buyer from Hong Kong. And I think the owner was quirked that he bought it from Hong Kong, and the buyer from Hong Kong was trying to find. It was just a very strange situation, and the deal didn't happen. And I'm ever so sorry it didn't.
Why would he be irked about someone from Hong Kong?
I think that he read the T's and C's, and I think there was a slight misunderstanding with the way the T's and C's were written, that our T's and C's are meant under British law, obviously, for UK and European consumers, and obviously a buyer from Hong Kong is not protected under the same EU consumer rights, etc. But look, it wasn't an ideal situation, but we've sold, knocking on the door of 1,700 cars now. And you know, out of all of those, we could probably count the issues on less than 10 fingers, or fingers and thumbs. But you know, they do happen. But we will be getting another one. And sorry, Ben, that didn't work out on the Yaris.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, well, what I noticed, I mean, I remember obviously when you first started, and it had, you know, I don't know, there's maybe like 6 or 8 cars, and that's it. You'd look at them, and you know, and you, from my point of view, it's been fascinating to watch it grow and grow and grow, and bigger and bigger and bigger cars coming on as well. Because I never, you know, so I was like looking at it, and I can see that sort of bring a trailer model, and I was like, this is amazing. And I've come close to consigning some cars a few times, and a lot of my friends actually already have. But it was just amazing to see the different value of cars which have gradually been coming to. The Singer obviously is the most recent example. Yeah. But I mean, you know, you're going to be getting in a not too distant future. This is just going to be a platform where there's going to be Koenigseggs and stuff and Ferrari.
Well, I honestly, you know, for me, when we started this as a car dealer, it was about fluidity. You know, I'm a deal junkie, so it's about pace. Not about the money. It is about the pace of doing a deal. I don't want to open up Classic and Sports Car every month and see the same dealers advertising the same cars at the same prices. You know, a dealer needs to learn when to make a loss if he's paid too much for it, and you keep dropping the price once a week until someone nibbles and buys it. So it only makes sense to do that on the flip side, with starting the bidding at 0 and let it go up. You know, our sales through rate, I think, is 83% or something like that as it stands. And you know, I just find it so exciting. I wish I could participate a bit more in the auctions. And what is really, someone said to me the other day, why are you selling a Singer for £5,000? Well, because why shouldn't we be? We've done no more work on a Singer than we have on a 30 grand Yaris or a 10 grand 205 GTI. And you know, I'm looking for, you know, that Singer, we effectively charge the buyer, if you don't take the VAT on the fee, but you know, 0.75% buyer's premium. You know, that's comparing it to the 10% of the American auction houses, or the 15% of some of the UK auction houses. You know, yeah. I know what fee I'd prefer to be paying. And that, you know, we made a world record with that Singer. So, you know, it demonstrates, we had 75,000 views on it. We've got the eyes, and we can say, well, the seller sells for free and the buyer pays a capped fee of £5,000 plus the VAT.
What I like about it as well, though, is the transparency of the, you know, collecting cars market price, because there are so many people now, news outlets and definitely all of us, who are looking at the levels those cars are selling for and going, well, that's the market price of those cars. It was one of the big things seeing the 812 Superfast that went for about 210 on collecting cars. That was one of the big reasons for me sort of deciding to maybe ditch my 812, because I could see where the value had gone, you know, what they'd moved to. So I find that what's fascinating is those new levels, those market levels, which are suddenly becoming available, and they're very public, everyone can see them. And that also is obviously causing a little bit more of sensible pricing right across the motor trade, because there's that benchmark to look at, which, I mean, it's very, you know, it's fantastic for
it's not all, you know, that's setting the market price. You know, we don't put estimates on the cars because it's not our place to put an estimate on the car. The market will decide what it's worth. And you know, no one thought RS2s were worth 77 grand until last night. You know, you would have thought they were worth 50 grand. So it's not always about talking the values down. It's about setting the market value. And the way we, you know, our fees there for a reason. And some people think that's expensive, but you know, I've got 26 people working with me now. You know, there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes to make sure we give your car as much promotion as possible and get all the eyes on it, so you get the bidders, you know, or you go and stick it on Auto Trader, pay them 50 quid. Do they tweet your car? Do they Instagram your car? Do they upload 150 photos? Do they write a description? Once you've paid their 50 quid, they're done. They're done with you. You know, we don't make our money until the car's sold. So you've got our attention until the very last milliseconds of the auction.
Wow. Yeah, and to be honest, it's the number of photos, the quality of them, and the detailedness of the description. I mean, that's really what gives you the confidence to get in there and bid on them. I mean, you know, that's the big differentiator, I think, is the quality of those write-ups and the visual. You know, I mean, I've come close many times. I tell you, it's just terrifying. There's been a few that I've actually bid on and didn't get, but there's been so many more that I've watched or just paid attention to. So yeah,
Great.
I find it brilliant. So one question for you, actually, Edward. So are you going to ever write a book, a tell-all book about you know, your adventures and all those things, like John Collins and Tom Hartley? Is there going to be an Edward Lovett one of those?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure my ego's big enough for that, Damian. But maybe if I can create a successful business in collecting cars, and I'm sat on a beach one day with someone that can help me write, because I'm not very good at that. Who knows? I'm not sure anyone will be that interested in my story.
I'll quite happily write it for you. I'll quite happily be your ghostwriter.
Oh, fine. There we go. Perfect. Done. Deal. Well, Damian, look, thanks so much for joining us, and we should do this again when there's another interesting topic to chat about. We'll hop on another Zoom, and if this is received well, then we should definitely make it a regular thing.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. If there's any other things about if you fancy venting about the influencer world, then I'm always here.
Well, look, everyone, do go and follow Damian at CarGuys.TV. Damian's also got a channel which is WatchGuys.TV as well.
Yeah.
And of course, follow us on collectingcars.com. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.